Welcome back, Web3 TV. I'm Cristina Najera, and today we are at the Web3 Freedom Podcast with Staci, the CEO of Algorand Foundation. I'm very happy to have her here. She's one of the women leading the space. So, welcome, Staci. I would love to hear more from you.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me. You've got a lot going on in Dubai this week, so I'm happy to be a small part of it.
Thank you, Staci. I'm very happy as well. Would you like to start sharing more about you and your journey in Web3?
Sure. So I have the honor and the privilege to run the Algorand Foundation. I was quite interested in Web3, and in particular, of course, in the beginning, like many people, in Bitcoin, starting in 2013. And I worked at a very sort of famous financial markets think tank. And I heard about this new financial technology, and I've always been quite interested in financial inclusion and access to capital. So I got pretty involved in Bitcoin. And then I was a bit, I had my day job, and Web3 was a bit of a side hustle. But then I was recruited to be on the board of the Algorand Foundation. And then a few months after that, they made me the CEO. So now I am full-time, 24/7 in Web3.
Yes, 100%. In Web3, everything changed every second, so we need to keep being updated. And with that, I would love to know more about Algorand Foundation. Why did you choose them?
Well, it's a little bit related to my first experience with Bitcoin. So I care, as I said, very much about emerging markets and disenfranchised people having access to finance. I think this is one of the most, your podcast is about freedom, and I think that's one of the most important components of freedom. And so I learned over time that Bitcoin was not exactly fit for purpose, and the ecosystem was evolving. And when I was recruited to be on the board of the Algorand Foundation, of course, I had heard of it, of course, and I had heard that it was a very good layer one blockchain technology, and that the founder was very famous MIT professor, but I didn't really know very much about anything else about it. But when I started researching it, I thought to myself, right, this is the technology that can actually potentially solve the problems that I've spent my entire life caring about, because this technology has very high throughput, 10,000 transactions per second, is very low transaction fees. It's very environmentally friendly. And these are the kinds of things that I thought, okay, now this one might really be the answer. And so I was thrilled to be a part of, just making sure the world knows about Algorand and can help people build on it and use it and be a part of our ecosystem.
100%, and you are doing an amazing job. Staci, can Web3 bring more freedom?
Yes. When I think about, yes. I mean, in fact, I don't know that I'd even be in this space if I didn't believe that. And I think when I think about it theoretically, and I think about it practically. So theoretically, I think of Web3 as something that can't be shut down, no matter how many people don't like it or don't want it to exist. It has the potential, theoretically, to exist independently of those that try to thwart it. Now, when we live in, societies and countries that have good monetary policy and that have a rule of law, that's a bit of a luxury, but it's quite a necessity for people in many countries around the world, right, where they are possibly under attack by the government, where savings are eroded, where they are a victim in many ways of government policies and societal effects because of the lack of rule of law and that kind of thing. So I think that is just like a fundamental bastion of freedom. But again, it's a little bit more of a kind of a theoretical. It's not theoretical, but it's a bit more kind of highbrow idea. But for me, the practical brass tacks element of freedom for me is, I think of freedom very practically as like access to money, access to credit. Like, you are not free unless you have access particularly to credit, right? And so you don't realize, and I don't mean you specifically, but people that are kind of middle class, growing up in a middle class society anywhere in the world, the idea that we can, use a credit card, access our bank account, get every time you use a credit card, you're getting, that's why it's called a credit card. You're getting a little bit of access to credit, a little line of credit. You can, finance your mortgage. You can do all of these things. But for many people, they don't have access to a bank account. They don't have access to credit of any kind. And Web3, that promise of financial inclusion, is delivered by Web3. The idea that you don't have to have a bank account to be able to send and receive money, that you can make exchanges from one kind of currency to another, that you can hold US dollar stablecoin in a wallet that you own and control without having to go to a bank account. These kinds of things are, they are, called and talked about in terms of financial freedom, but they are really about freedom itself. And in particular, if you'll allow me one more minute on this, I think the idea that you can control your own identity and how much of your identity you share and with whom, I think is the third fundamental component of freedom. And an example that I'd like to give on this is, in the United States, you cannot drink until you're 21. And so for with daughters out there, or me as a younger woman, I wanted to go to a bar. Why did I have to show that bouncer, that bartender, where I live? Why couldn't I just demonstrate and prove that I was 21? Why did I have to give a driver's license with my home address on it to that guy that I didn't know? Right? And so this idea of self-sovereign identity, which is impossible without Web3, is, I think, the third kind of pillar of freedom that Web3 delivers.
100%. There are a lot of benefits on using Web3. And with that, I would love to know more your insights on being a woman in this space. We are in an environment where it's mainly men-dominated. How do you feel about that?
I think the finance in general, look, I mean, there's a little bit of male dominance, of course, to the space, but finance in general is very, there's a lot of money on the line. And in crypto too, there's a lot of money on the line. And so people are quite serious. They don't care so much, who you are, where you come from. They care if you're doing a good job. It's a very meritocratic kind of place, crypto, I think. And if you can have a good idea, you are accepted. Some of the most powerful and influential people that I know in crypto are women, right? And so, my community, they can get, when they get mad at me, for example, and sometimes they have been, quite mad at me, or they think I'm not doing a good job. The kinds of insults that I might get on Twitter are like, she's a banker, she doesn't know, she's not a degen, stuff like that. But nobody ever says to me, oh, she's a woman, she shouldn't have this job because she's a woman. That has never once happened to me. So I think it's male dominated. And there's a little bit of another insult I will get is she's a Democrat, from some people. But, it's not about, I find it a very welcoming and quite hospitable environment, actually, which is not to say that there are no problems, of course, but I think it's pretty accepting, really.
Yes, thank you for sharing your insights. And what I love about Algorand is...
Can I ask you from your point of view, though, because you're a journalist in this space. How do you feel about being a woman in this space?
To be honest, as you mentioned, I feel the Web3 ecosystem is very inclusive. So it's not about gender. It's about what are you bringing to the table, what are your talents, what is your passion? Because I believe people that are in crypto are very passionate about it. They really believe in the vision. They really understand the technology. So it doesn't matter where you come from, because this technology, this new era, allows you to bring your talents, to bring your community, to bring whatever you want to do here. And yeah, I feel very welcome, to be honest. And with that, I will also like to add that what I love about Algorand is that they are always finding ways to bring more people to the ecosystem. And one of those is the Algo Kit. Now, developers can use Python to build on top of Algorand. Would you like to share other new updates or something that you are working on to keep bringing more people into the space?
Well, this was a really important milestone for us, and we took about 2 years to build this. And I will say, just by way of a segue, that our CTO was trying from day one to hire women in the technology office. And it's been very hard, actually. So now we had two fantastic women, but it has been difficult to get resumes. And the more technical, the more difficult. And so that this is a call for women out there that are pursuing STEM and computer science and developer relations type things, that please, don't think about Web3 as well as a career path. But that was a really, when I got to Algorand, it was like it's like you're kind of trying to make the world excited about your washing machine, and that you have the best washing machine on the market, but all the sales function doesn't work, the community kind of doesn't work, like everything like around the washing machine wasn't working. And so I knew that we had the best blockchain in crypto, but as a very good example that you brought up, it was hard to program on it. And so we needed to make a very user-friendly programming language. Our CTO, that's the first thing that he really focused on. The second thing that we are rolling out now is, and this can get very technical very quickly, but we have some of the world's best cryptographers associated with Algorand, and they liked a 25-word mnemonic phrase. Everybody else is a 24-word phrase. Compatible with the rest of the ecosystem. So if you had an Ethereum address, you could have a number of Ethereum accounts and one Algorand account. One Algorand address under your big account. You couldn't do that because we were not interoperable in that way. So it's like blocking and tackling kind of things that we need to do. We were not properly represented. Our transaction count was not properly represented on a lot of these big data providers. So like, this is not fun or sexy stuff, but you got to go data provider by data provider, convince them that they're not talking about you properly. The US dollar coin, the USDC on Algo was not available on Coinbase, for example. That took really almost a year and a half of just talking to them and negotiating with them and making sure that they understood the value proposition. And when you're a smaller blockchain, it's harder to get attention. And by the way, when you are in a bit of a bear market, that's one of the benefits of a bear market. In a bull market, nobody pays attention to you at all. But in a bear market, you can really use that time to just like pound and get those things, work through your to-do list in a way, which we very much did. So those are all kinds of things on the tech side that we've been extremely focused on. The biggest thing that we are rolling out now, though, and this will happen at the end of the year, is that we are now going to reward staking on the Algorand protocol. So this is a very important mechanism for ensuring that we have the security of the network and also that the network is decentralized. Because if we begin to reward people for staking their algos on the blockchain, we're going to get a lot more people involved in that process. And I think this is going to be an absolute game changer for this. And this stuff is super hard to do properly. And we have, for better or worse, it is our culture and our philosophy that we don't roll things out until they're complete. So we don't like really roll out the beta versions of ideas, right? And so, but as of let's call it, just to be safe, Q1 of next year, we will be able to offer staking rewards for those that want to participate in the security of the network. And this is going to be a huge game changer for us. Then we have a brand new marketing campaign that we are going to be rolling out in the next month. We're super excited about that. We have had a new CMO for a few months now, and he's already come out pretty strong with some fun, advertisements and fixing and, working with the community. This Fix the Data initiative comes out of our marketing department. But now we are really rolling out I think, a very fun and exciting marketing campaign as well. So, we're working pretty hard, and we have a lot of irons in the fire, I would say. So we're very excited about 2025.
100%. I see how much value is bringing Algorand to the world, and especially to the real-world assets. I love to talk about this topic because when people are not familiar with Web3 and you explain real-world assets to them, they understand better how they can enter this market. So I would love to know what projects on real world assets you would like to share with us today.
Okay, so we have a couple of different kinds of real world asset projects. And when you think about, for those of you that are not as familiar as Cristina with the whole Web3 idea, the idea of a real world asset is that you represent that asset in tokenized form on chain. And that can give you a couple of different advantages. One is that if it's a lumpy thing, like say it's an apartment building, right? And if you want to invest in that apartment building, well, you know, you're going to need a few $1,000,000, tens of millions of dollars probably to invest in an apartment building and get that rental income, which, by the way, is a very diversified source of investment income. So it would be good if average everyday households could do that. But you can't do that because you don't have, you know, $10 million to invest in an apartment building. So what tokenization enables you to do is represent that building in tokenized form, which you can kind of slice and dice into very small pieces. So there is a company building on Algorand, for example, called Lofty AI. They take rental properties. You can invest in a portion of that property, which means you get a portion of those rental proceeds. You do this on a property by property basis in the form of a DAO, because Web3 is quite decentralized notion. And so you, as a DAO, it's like a governance DAO, you manage that property as the DAO. And if you go to the Lofty website, you will see there's all the documents about the property, there's the rental history of the property, there's, you know, who manages the property, and you can be very involved in the management of that property because you are an owner. You are an owner even if with $50 of that property. It's very empowering, and you get your little slice of rental income. So you can now avail yourself of this investment opportunity. It was only available before. So this is a very exciting notion in my view. Another thing that we have just done is Aberdeen is a very well-known, very big UK money market fund, and we have tokenized that money market fund again. And so now anybody can take a tiny piece of an Aberdeen money market fund. And we, in fact, just did a swap between, it was a pilot swap, but we did a swap between two wallets, and transferring, I think it was €1 million worth of this fund happened automatically in a second. Now, that is not how financial assets trade in, you know, as we call it, TradFi. You make the trade, you wait 2 days for it to settle, then the money comes into your account, and there's a lot of counterparty risk there. Collateral is kind of held up and not put to work properly. And so, but you can now trade these things in, you know, in a nanosecond. And so we think that's pretty exciting too, especially if that takes off and gets quite big. And a lot of people think about real world assets as this idea of kind of slicing and dicing it into little pieces. And I think that's a very good way of looking at it. And my, you know, future woo-woo story about this might be that if you take this Aberdeen money market example again, what if you bought yourself, you know, $1 worth of an Aberdeen money market fund? And you could use that little slice of that fund to maybe buy a cup of coffee in Dubai. Like, why not, right? Because it would settle atomically, automatically. You can't do that if it only settles 2 days later, right? Settles automatically. And now imagine having all or almost all of your money, not in cash, but in assets, earning money for you. But then if you want to buy a cup of coffee with it, you just buy a cup of coffee. And so you can imagine a continuum of assets, from cash to big lumpy things that you never thought you could invest in before, becoming very seamless together. And I think that stuff is like super exciting. And I say it's kind of woo-woo sci-fi, but I think it's going to be in the next years that this actually happens. We'll see this in 10 years for sure, if not sooner.
Yes, we have seen how much technology has impacted our life, especially now that AI is taking over. And also, we would love to know more your thoughts on how Algorand and blockchain is going to be in the future.
Well, you know, I might quibble a little bit with this idea that AI is taking over. I don't know if it's taking over. I mean, you know, the AI chat GPT-4 kind of experience that we all have, and I think it's very interesting technology, of course. Sometimes it's pretty cool. And you're like, wow, okay. Did they really just create a podcast out of some documents that I fed it? Like that stuff is definitely cool. But mostly it operates as kind of like, as I call it, like the intern level in an organization. Like you need humans around it too that can think and make decisions. And it does like very stupid things, of course, still. But you're right. It is going to get more and more permeated into the future. And I think blockchain in general and Algorand in particular will have a big role to play as AI comes and gets more pervasive in society and in the economy. And that's because blockchain is a source of integrity, and AI calls into question integrity, and it calls it into question at scale. You don't know if this photograph is real or not. You don't know if this person really said this or not. And blockchain is the only technology that can timestamp events and record them in a way that is not mutable by bad actors, right? It will stay there in the public sphere so that people can always refer back to the original. And I think AI will crumble under its own weight without blockchain there to help distinguish what's real, when it happened, who did it, in a way that if it's on the blockchain, it can't be tampered with. I think those things need to go hand in hand. So that's the first piece, I think, when you think about Algorand in the future. The second piece, I think when I assume that you're asking this question, I assume you mean it in a kind of futuristic way. Rolling out payments to developing countries. We're doing all kinds of important things but they're not like futuristic necessarily. But the second kind of futuristic thing that we're very focused on is quantum secure cryptography, right? So when the quantum computers come along, and they can't do this now, they will be able to kind of break prime numbers, not to get too sort of technical about this, but things that rely on the idea that prime numbers are very difficult to break could potentially be exposed in a quantum. So you need to have the pieces to put together a quantum secure environment. Now, Algorand now has quantum security for all of the history of the chain. And so that is guaranteed. We use something called Falcon keys, and we won one of the co-authors of the paper that won a big contest that was put out just to make sure, with all of the brightest minds in cryptography, deciding whether these things were quantum secure or not. The paper that won, the technology around that won these Falcon keys, one of the three co-authors was from Algorand. So we have now implemented this, and every 15 minutes, this key certifies the quantum security of the chain. And so you cannot mess, even if quantum computers come along, you cannot go back in time and mess with what we have recorded on chain. And we are the only chain, I think, that can say that. So our mission statement is that we want a world where data has integrity. That's the first, and innovative ideas can scale. But that first part is fundamental to us, where data has integrity. And so we work very hard on these kinds of issues.
100%. I really support that idea, because that's the beauty of blockchain, that everything is transparent and that you can create new products that everybody can use, because it has a system where everybody is aware of what's happening. Thank you so much, Staci. It was a pleasure having you here. I admire you a lot, and it was an honor to have you in the podcast. And thank you so much for watching. Remember to share this with your friends, because everybody deserves to know more about Web3, AI, and blockchain. I'm Cristina Najera. See you next time.